Dora Philippine Kallmus was born in Vienna, Austria in 1881 to a Jewish family. Her father was a lawyer. Her sister Anna was born in 1878. Although her mother, Malvine, née Sonnenberg, died when she was 11 years old, Dora's family remained an important source of emotional and financial support throughout her photography career. She and her sister Anna were both well educated, spoke English and French, and played the piano. They also traveled throughout Europe together. Dora became interested in photography while assisting the son of the painter Hans Makart. Hans was professionally trained and uses a lot of yellow in his paintings with spotlights on characters in the canvases. In 1905, Dora was the first woman to be admitted to theory courses at the Grafische Lehr- and Versuchsanstalt, the Graphic Training Institute. That same year, she became a member of the Association of Austrian Photographers. At that time, she was the first woman allowed to study theory, which in 1908 the Graphic Training Institute granted women access to other courses in photography. So she was very privileged and likely paid her way into these institutions. Her father, Philip, was a government lawyer, which connected the family to high-ranking public officials during the Weimar Republic. With a lot of corruption, prominent people in banking and business, diplomats, and members of the aristocracy commingled. Dora had ambition and plans to become fashionable, so she chose a path in photography, which was not the expected lifestyle for someone of her social set. In 1907, Dora went to Berlin for a 5-month apprenticeship with the influential portraitist Nicola Perscheid, whose itinerant approach due to his travel between Berlin and Austria impressed Dora, who had similar entrepreneurial vision and natural networking ability, which would give rise to multiple photography studios. Perscheid was developing a new kind of soft focus camera lens with a wide depth of field for large format portrait photography. But it was his traditional sense of pose, facial lighting, and composition that made an impact on Dora. His portrait of painter Gustav Klimt's model and lover Fraulein Sacher is pure old school Art Nouveau. In a 2005 New York Times review, the critic Grace Gluck described Perscheid as Berlin's court and celebrity photographer par excellence. In the ongoing trend of the American so-called coastal elite worshipping Weimar, she commented on Sacher's enormous hat, her enveloping gown, and soulful gaze, and the book held in her dangling hand. Critic Gluck hypothesized that her finger marks a swoony romantic passage. In just a few years, such a passage would be nude dances, courtesy of young, impoverished women like Anita Berber, whom you can learn about on this channel. After her schooling, Dora returned to Vienna, where her family used its significant influence and wealth. Supposedly, she received a, quote, horrendous sum of money from her father to help her furnish her studio, pay employees, and establish her brand, Atelier Dora. This is a common trend. TV show Girls writer Lana Dunham had the same beginning. The name was based on the pseudonym Madame Dora, which she used professionally. In addition to changing her name, a common practice for Jews prior to World War II, Dora also changed her watermark throughout her career from Dora to Laura to Sora. Unless otherwise noted, all photographs in this presentation were taken by Dora. Enter Arthur Benda. Dora talked the young photographer she had gotten to know during her time with Perscheid into abandoning their teacher and coming to Vienna to become her technical assistant, cameraman, and eventually business partner. Both of their names soon stamped each image, signifying that Benda was behind the camera and in the darkroom while Dora was out in front finding clients. So we have to ask, was Benda doing all of the actual photography? Why did Dora invite him in the first place? Was he needed because her photography skills weren't that good? In 1925, Dora and Benda opened a second studio in Paris. Dora was able to attract wealthy vacationers from Carlsbad for studio portraits. The peak of renown was reached when Madame Dora photographed the nobility in 1916 on the occasion of the coronation of Emperor Charles I as King of Hungary. In 1927, Benda took over Dora's studio. She had run the second studio in Paris since 1925. Benda continued Dora Atelier under the name Dora Benda, together with his wife, Hannie Mittler. In addition to portraits, he mainly photographed nudes that made the company name known in men's magazines worldwide. A major order from the King of Albania, Zogo I, who had himself and his family photographed in 1937 for 3 weeks by Benda in Tirana, secured Arthur Benda and his studio financially. In 1938, he was doing so well he opened a new studio in Vienna, which he continued to operate under his own name only after the Second World War. Arthur Benda died of a stroke in 1969 in a Viennese hospital. Back in the 20s, Dora's success continued thanks to her skill, supposedly, and connections. In 1916, she photographed Archduke Ferdinand and his 5 daughters. Was this the start of the targeting of the Archduke by Weimar connections to initiate World War I? Madame Dora became the international photographer of the most sensational people of the day in Vienna, Berlin, or Paris. During her reign in portrait and fashion photography, as cameras became affordable, which you can learn about in the Romanov photography video on this channel, photography was swiftly replacing graphic illustration in fashion magazines. Madame Dora contributed regularly to Didam, the journal founded by Ullstein in 1912, as well as many other magazines. Celebrities shot by Dora would regularly get the cover and arguably go out onto the most visible stage, the page, in the world. In this way, Dora pushed certain things onto the public. Race mixing, nudity, fetishes, showing women with their eyes blindfolded, cross-dressing, and even one of Berlin's most famous transsexuals, the circus performer Barbette, who died in 1973. He performed in full drag, revealing himself as male only at the end of his act. Dora's reach was so far she inspired Man Ray, not least through her Barbette photographs, and you can learn more about Man Ray and the Black Dahlia in their videos on this channel. As pop culture boomed, which you can learn about in the Weimar playlist on this channel, Dora's bread and butter increasingly came from photo shoots or photo essays produced in collaboration with clothing designers to publicize the latest dresses or large impractical hats. It was Dora who, in certain ways, invented a new genre, coupling celebrities with fashion houses to create maximally desirable commercial images, a prime example being her 1927 shoot of Josephine Baker in a Jean Patou dress. Had Dora used her influence and her unique sense to elevate the next sexy thing? Or was creative power in the hands of the magazine editors, who then hired Dora, or any one of her competitors, to do the same? Dora also photographed normal people and herself. There are many self-portraits of her with cats dressed up, and of close friends with dogs. She loved to take in pets. Critics argue Dora's genius was getting her clients to trust her, to relax under lights and feel at home in front of the big scary camera. This is false. Cameras were commonplace and not scary. Dora's subjects usually wanted to show off in some degenerate way, and Dora enabled and encouraged it. Her photos look humid, as if she made the room really warm and snapped away. In this, we see this ongoing trend of sex work as art, like the pornographic breathy sounds that have replaced music on the radio.
Dora used props, lighting, and composition to lift people into this humid, imaginative realm, to make them appear on film more extraordinary than they would look back home in their bathroom mirrors. Just like the painter John Singer Sargent years before, she elongated the human form. That is, she made people appear skinnier with various backdrops, which everyone loves. People of status approved of Dora during Weimar. After she moved to Paris in 1925, she shifted her focus to couture and befriended the Spanish designer Cristobal Balenciaga, who recently had a Satanist-inspired collection, as well as France's most popular milliner, Madame Agnes. She also befriended Cecil Beaton, a photographer, Maurice Chevalier, author Colette, and other lights of the Parisian glamour industries. To many, Dora's most poignant and nuanced photographers are her earlier portraits made with or by Arthur Benda, of gutsy avant-garde performers caught in the act of pushing the edge, like Berber and Drost or Anna Pavlova, prima ballerina of the Imperial Russian Ballet and Sergei Diaghilev's Ballet Russe. Many such images are not so much vogue as they are vibrant and emotionally gripping. We can sort of sense the starvation behind the photographs. Perhaps most importantly, they show us the Weimar Republic, a time of Germany that so many want us to forget. Dora's relative, the actress Rosa Bertens, who had starred in a play by August Strindberg, was 21 years her senior, and became her liaison to the cross-pollinating world of the arts around Vienna's succession. Before long, Dora was surrounded by singers, composers, dancers, actors, writers, and painters, and so they were able to push their degeneracy in a concerted way. From Karl Kraus to Arthur Schnitzler to Alma Mahler and Alban Berg to Gustav Klimt, the sex-crazed weirdo in his toga who fathered 14 children without ever getting married and caused Ronald Lauder to build a museum, complete with a faux Viennese period coffee shop on Fifth Avenue in New York City, catty-cornered to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. By that time, Dora arrived in Berlin and Paris. Her client list had grown exclusively to include virtually everyone who was anyone known by the public, from Marlene Dietrich on down. Between 1917 and 1927, Dora's studio became very commercial and produced photographs for Ludwig Zwieback and Bruder, a Viennese department store, again enabling the push onto the public. She was represented by Schostel Photo Agency, Egenter Schostel, who was also Jewish. When the Nazis rolled into Paris in 1940, Dora closed shop and moved down towards the French Riviera, where she was left alone by the Nazis. She managed to hide out in a cloister in La Lanvesse, interesting considering her degeneracy that she turned to Catholics, and then in an old farmhouse in a little village in Ardèche. Supposedly she converted to Catholicism, but this seems unlikely. Ardèche, France was not too far from where she had vacationed with her family at age 23 on the Côte d'Azur, which is when she bought her first Kodak Brownie box camera. Circa 1900, the same year Eastman Kodak rolled out the affordable snapshot, more or less inventing the concept of amateur photography. Dora survived, but her sister died in the Chelmno camp. After World War II, Dora returned to Paris with the hope of recontinuing her atelier. But times had changed, and her glamorous, flamboyant clients were either dead, had departed the country, or were old and out of fashion. The party was over. Young people didn't want degeneracy. They wanted the nuclear family. Dora began taking pictures on the fly without her large format camera or fancy studio. She was now on her own. She did continue to take occasional portraits of her former clients, such as aging stars like Colette. Over time, a very visceral body of work began to emerge from her lens, images of grotesque morbidity in which she desired to express her own victimhood while she had been chilling on the French Riviera for years. These were pictures taken inside slaughterhouses of butchered animal parts. In her diaries from the 1940s, she compared the fate of Jews to livestock, moving down an assembly line of industrialized murder. This is a total inversion of the Talmudic rendition of goyim, literal cattle, a term for Gentiles. Dora also had her clients pose with stripped dog heads, paving the way for Man Ray and his degeneracy with the naked human body in portrait photography. Madame Dora's career was brought to an end by a motorcycle accident in 1959, which left her mentally disabled when she was hit on the road. She returned to her family home in Austria, which the Austrian government gave back to her, defeating the trend that the Nazis seized everything from everybody and never got it back. Madame Dora died in Austria in 1963.